All right, welcome back to another episode of the Sports Department Podcast. I am Stephen Bologna, joined alongside Stephen Clark, Joe Paolantonio, and Jesse Norman, and we are here on this gorgeous Friday, May 28th, this rainy May 28th,
about to say,
to talk about some NFL rumors that have been happening. Julio Jones says on live TV that he is out of the Falcons. He wants out, and is he going to be traded? That's the real question. Aaron Rodgers, for the past month, has been saying he wants out or the GM of the Packers to be fired. And, you know, OTAs have started, so we're just very early into the football season, very early. But first off, how you guys doing?
I'm doing well. This is the NFL's been a little bit on the back burner on the streets lately. But I tell you, Shannon Sharp has done his best to give us the tea, even though I don't think it was entirely legal.
I don't think so.
It's irrelevant, though. It was good content, and that's all that matters to me. But I'm doing good. The subs are flying off the shelf, so that's all. You know, that's the end of the day. That's all that matters.
Looks like a big, comfy chair, Joe.
It is.
Looks
My
nice,
throne, as they call it.
No, I'm doing good as well. You know, excited to talk some football again. Like you said, Steve, though, we're very, very, very early into the football season. But, you know, baseball's moving along, basketball, hockey, playoffs. So I'm doing well as Steve disappears into the abyss. Yeah. I'm enjoying every other game, every other series pretty much for the most part. But, yeah, man, you know, life's moving as Steve just disappeared into the abyss. And he's back. But, yeah. Doing well altogether.
I'm back.
Oh, look at that.
It's a good slide in there. What'd I miss?
Just talked about how life's going swell, Steve. That's about it.
Jesse, you're all good? I missed that.
I'm good.
Your New York Knicks are doing good, I saw.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh man, I'm so happy. The Nets are in the the Nets and the Bucks are like the only two absolute curb stomps this first round. It feels good for my team to be a part of one of them.
Who are the Bucks playing?
The Heat.
No idea.
Miami Heat.
The reigning Eastern Conference champions.
Eastern Conference champions. Damn right.
Yikes. So let's get right into it here. Joe, you alluded to it earlier. Shannon Sharp calls Julio Jones live on Skip and Shannon, and Julio Jones says he wants out. He does not want to be with the Falcons anymore. Reports saying that some teams are calling and the Falcons are listening. Now, my question to you, does Julio get traded? And if so, where does he get traded to?
He's absolutely getting traded. I think that the Falcons, even themselves, have made it kind of clear that they're looking to get some more payroll flexibility. And I mean, there's a real market for him. At this point, even like after the draft, there's teams that will and should go all in for Julio Jones. I mean, that's the bottom line. The question is this prime Julio? I mean, we're talking about he's getting up there in age, wrong side of 30. He was injured for most of last season. He wasn't entirely healthy even when he was playing. So I think this is exciting. It's good conversation piece, but I don't know how much elite level football Julio has left.
Well, here's the thing. Even if Julio's lost a step, he was already so much better than everybody else. So even not prime Julio is probably still a top 15 receiver in the league. And now if you're saying teams are wary of giving up a first round pick and the demand might only be, you know, maybe a second rounder, every single team in the league should offer up a second rounder for Julio Jones. I don't think there is a team in the NFL that should not give up a second rounder for the ability to even get a slower, not as good Julio Jones. We're talking about the best player in Atlanta Falcons history. He is everything to the Atlanta Falcons franchise, and it's really funny that the Falcons have only now come out and said that it's basically for cap space purposes. allegedly Julio requested a trade 2 months ago. So why didn't they just come out and say, hey, look, Julio wants a trade? It's not that we screwed balancing our checkbook so much that we have to get rid of the best wide receiver in the NFL over the past 10 years. Why go about it that way? It just makes you look bad as a franchise.
Yeah, no, I agree too, but we got to talk about where he's gonna go, Julio Jones, because as we basically all alluded to, he's not staying in Atlanta. He said it to Shannon Sharp. He also said he's not going to be a Dallas Cowboy because he wants to win. And I'm looking at the array of teams that are rumored and everything involved in this situation, and I'm looking at one team that is very, very close to winning. Former MVP, Joe, you're going to love when I say this. I think Baltimore needs to make a big, big move for Julio Jones because, one, they neglected getting Lamar any weapons at all throughout his whole time as a Raven for the most part. It just makes sense. It's picture perfect having Julio and Lamar. It gives him that wide receiver one that he desperately needed, and it could honestly take them to the very next level, to the AFC Championship and beyond. Even who even knows?
I like the Baltimore fit. I don't think Baltimore pulls the trigger on that
Absolutely
move.
not.
They've seemed pretty adamant that they're not going to go all in at the receiver position. But a team, I'm looking at a team who has shown this tendency to want to be all in, especially at the skill player position. And a team that really doesn't or shouldn't value draft picks very much. The New England Patriots should be in the market for Julio Jones. I think that should be at the top of the list for teams that are gonna call Atlanta. There's a deal that can be done. I think that they've loaded up pretty well offensively, but there's not a number one on that receiving core. I don't think, even after. I mean, Nelson Aguilar, come on, Jacoby Myers.
You can make the same argument for Baltimore too, though, with the wide receiving core of how lackluster they both are. So
well, the main problem with Baltimore too is going to be Baltimore has absolutely no money.
Mhm.
They have
have
no way to. Well, and here's the other problem though. It's a thing of like, oh well, they can just send money back. No, they can't, because Atlanta doesn't want any money because they can't take an impact player besides that somebody on a rookie deal. So I think New England would be a good fit. I think New England absolutely needs to go after them. The one position we have seen thoroughly throughout the career of Bill Belichick is he cannot draft receivers.
You can trade for Randy Moss.
He does not know how to draft receivers. He gets free agents. He trades for guys. He can't draft. So New England absolutely makes sense. A team that I would definitely think can push even further with Julio Jones as an acquisition is the San Francisco 49ers. You just got Trey Lance. If the reports are real and you possibly don't have to give up a first round pick, which you obviously don't have, yeah, absolutely pull the trigger on that. They also have the money for it. They have $17 million left in cap space. They can make that trade happen and not worry about having to send money back or how it's going to affect their cap situation.
I think if there's one team that is willing to overpay, and this is a team that I think is right there, it's Mike Vrabel and the Tennessee Titans. I mean, you can have the most physically scary offense potentially ever assembled. A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, Julio Jones. I mean, the core three. Tannehill, I think, is serviceable enough to get you to that next level. You know, it just, what scares me is, I'm not comparing the two, but from 2014 to 18, Julio and AB were by far the clear-cut 1 and 2. AB leaves Pittsburgh, he goes down a spiral. I just, like Joe said, I'm scared that if Julio leaves Atlanta, we may never see the same Julio again.
But I think if we don't see the same Julio again, we wouldn't see him in Atlanta either, because if anything, it's probably because of the hip. That being said, again, even if Julio's at a lower stage in his career, I still think he's a top 15, top 20 receiver. I don't think there's that whole Antonio Brown thing where Brown just spiraled. Like, he just went absolutely insane. Got himself kicked off the Raiders, got himself in a really bad spot with the league, and legally, and all those different things. Julio, I think, is a much different case. And even if you're trading for him and he's not that guy, it's still worth a second round pick, because what if there's a chance that he is? Yeah. If he's still that number one guy, if let's say the Colts go out and grab him and now have prime Julio and Carson Wentz plays like a top 15 quarterback, the Colts are legitimately a Super Bowl contender. That's what he can do to a team. If he goes to the 49ers, they trade for him, they might push into like the absolute number 2 spot in the NFC behind the Bucs. Like, the Titans, I think, absolutely lock up the South if they get him. I think Julio can change so much for a franchise if he is still capable of being that top 10 receiver. And I'm sorry, there's too many whiffs in the second round. Like, I think draft picks at this point have become a little bit too valued, where everybody loves prospects. A lot of them don't work out.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like if something was going to happen to Antonio Brown, or not Antonio, to Julio Jones, going forward, it would be a decline based on injury. I don't think that there's anything about the Falcons that's making him great. Oh, and there's nothing about him off the fields that I think would have an effect like Antonio Brown. Anything that Julio Jones experiences would be completely injury based. I mean, as much as I talked about the hamstring and everything, it's not like he tore an ACL and this is something that he has to make a long recovery back. I mean, it seems like if you get him fresh, he can still be a difference maker. The only question is, I mean, there's going to be a bidding war, I think, among these teams. I think that the price is going to be driven up very high, and who's going to be willing to make that big step and maybe overpay for Julio Jones. And the answer, I mean, when I think of overpay, I can see a team like Las Vegas or Cleveland really being in the conversation. Those are two teams that can afford it. And that
Vegas,
can have him.
Imagine sending Odell over for Julio. That'd be interesting in Cleveland.
I mean, Atlanta, they'd get younger.
They would.
I mean, you can bet on Odell getting healthy, and you are committed to wanting to win now, obviously, with the drafting of Kyle Pitts and the restructuring of Matt Ryan. I feel like that at this point would probably be the best case scenario for Atlanta, is just a straight up swap, and maybe the Browns throw in a 5th rounder or something, but I think that's probably their best case scenario.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see if Julio gets dealt. There's still a lot of time a couple of months before the preseason begins and training camp. So we'll see if Julio gets dealt, but Shannon Sharpe might want to get a little bit of a legal team ready, because apparently it's not legal what he did. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, apparently there was no consent involved. He didn't know he was on television until Shannon told him, like, after he said what he said already.
Yeah. He told him all the way.
So nothing's going to happen, I'm assuming, just because the stature of Shannon Sharpe in the show. But
he might get a fine or something like that.
But if that was good old Brave New Radio when we did that, and someone said something sketchy like that on air, I feel like some people would be coming after us or something. But I even if it is a fine, what's that going to really do to Shannon Sharpe? Yeah.
So funny enough, a month to this date right here, Schefter breaks the news that Aaron Rodgers is telling people in the Green Bay front office that he wants out. Either he wants out or the Packers let go of GM. I'm going to botch this name, Brian Gutekunst. I'm not sure if that's how you say it at all. But that's where we stand. Rodgers reportedly wants out, or he wants the GM out. Now, he did come out a couple days ago and say none of this frustration comes from the Jordan Love draft pick. He said he loves working with Jordan. He thinks he's a great kid. But I mean, the rumors have kind of gotten cold through the past few weeks. Do you think he still gets traded?
No.
I personally don't. I don't.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
Joe, go ahead.
The longer this goes on, I think that like especially now after the draft, a full month after the draft, when you have teams building their offenses essentially and just game planning for the season ahead. I mean, who can really even take on Aaron Rodgers at this point, just logistically? Beyond that, I mean, there's not really much of a market anymore for him. Like
I think the market today, I think, stands where the market last month was. Denver, maybe Vegas.
That's about
possibly.
it. That's it.
And that's about it.
Yeah. I was on the train of he's gonna get traded for like a month now, but like seeing him like just chilling in Hawaii now and seeing him on with Kenny Mayne on ESPN, and just I feel like he's like more relaxed and he kind of cleared his head from all the nonsense of recent. And as like you guys said too, this is dragging on for a long time now, and the longer this goes, the more confident I feel that he will return. They probably will have to make a couple moves in the some of the guys up top. Some of them might have to be let go for him to be happy enough to come back. But even if he does come back, would there still be like a like kind of like buzz in the locker room of like, oh, this guy who was walking out on us for a little bit finally decides to come back? Like, we don't know if the Packers are going to play the same way as we've seen them play the last couple of years. They might be a little off because of this whole situation too. So he could not only be affecting himself right now, but he's infecting the whole organization and whole team this way. But I do think he comes back at the end of my statement. I do think Rodgers officially does come back, and that stuff.
As much as we all, love Aaron Rodgers and agree that they haven't necessarily done the things to keep him happy, I do want to make a side and say the Packers roster is not bad. Not at all. They've consistently given Rodgers top 15 offensive lines. They always have a good offensive line every year consistently. They always have running backs that they find. Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, honestly probably shouldn't have drafted another one this year considering they just drafted one last year. But Devontae Adams, Robert Tonyan, and then the lack has always kind of been that other receiver that they've never really been able to find. They couldn't find one, when Jordy Nelson was there. There was Jordy Nelson, and then Greg Jennings started to decline. And before Jordy Nelson, it was Greg Jennings as the number one. They've always kind of struggled to find that number two. But they've always given Rodgers pretty good teams. I understand his frustration with sometimes the lack of really good pass catchers because they expect him to make them better, which he consistently does. But they have always kind of given him a good defense, and he always has had a run game over at least the last 2-3 years. And he has always had a good offensive line pretty much since being there. So while I understand his frustrations, they're not Detroit. Like they're not other teams that are just not getting anybody. Like he still has probably the best receiver in the NFL, or at least the best receiver in the NFL last year.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is we've been hearing for years that Rodgers isn't happy. And, is this the offseason that Rodgers gets traded? I mean, we all remember the last kind of years of McCarthy. He wasn't happy with how McCarthy was running things. And then the first year with LaFleur, he wasn't happy with LaFleur. The question is, if Rodgers does get traded, if Vegas, I can't see them moving on from Derek Carr. I think Gruden and Carr have that good kind of chemistry. And on Denver's side, I mean, we've heard Denver linked to every single quarterback this offseason, and they pull the trigger on Teddy Bridgewater.
And then they don't get it.
They get Teddy Bridgewater.
I'm telling you, Elway still wants Locke to be it. He still wants Locke to hit, and it's not going to happen. But bringing in Bridgewater, while it also gives you a backup and gives you a complete alternative to Locke, because while Locke is just going to go out there and sling the ball all over, Teddy's going to be much more safe with it. They brought in Teddy because they knew he would be a good backup. they still really want Locke to be the guy. And even at that point, I don't think they're going to be inclined enough to make a move where they have to trade a really good player. They might have to throw in a Jerry Jeudy. They might have to throw in, a Justin Simmons. They might have to throw in somebody like that. And I just don't know if they do that. While they should, if the, idea arises, because that's a Super Bowl roster just with a gaping massive hole at quarterback and pretty much nowhere else. I don't think they would pull the trigger even if Green Bay tried to talk with them.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of see that with the passing of Justin Fields too. There, pick number 9 a month ago. Clearly, it seems that they still have some kind of confidence in Locke. But if Rodgers does get traded, then you have to worry about, will Devontae Adams want out? Because that's that's been his right hand man since Adams came in the league. So you don't.
I think it depends on how good Love is.
Yeah.
Well, and that's something else we can mention. A report came out today or yesterday, one or the other. The Packers allegedly are really happy with Love's progression. They put out that report that they really like what Love has shown. I mean, it's OTAs. What can you really see? But was that a plant? Was that saying, hey, Aaron, if you really want out, that's fine. We're going to move along with this Jordan Love kid. I don't know. Like, are they playing a game of chicken here? They testing each other?
Maybe.
It has to be all a game, because I don't understand why they would want to leak this Jordan Love information if it wasn't to send a message to Aaron Rodgers. I mean, if you're trying to keep Rodgers happy and keep him on the squad, I don't think you hype up his backup in the process. I think that'll just even make him more upset, and rightfully so. I think that this entire Aaron Rodgers saga is being a little bit propped up by a lot of the media and ourselves and social media. I can honestly see a very likely scenario that Rodgers shows up to the mandatory practices and all is normal within a month or two. I mean, the important thing to remember is that the Packers players are on Aaron's side on this issue. So I don't think that there's going to be a problem with team morale, so to speak. I think they're pretty much on the same page. And I think even Matt LaFleur is like with them and with Rodgers. He's really not said much to go against what Aaron is saying. So I think that this idea that Green Bay might struggle due to a lack of chemistry, it can be put to bed if Rodgers comes back.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Rodgers. It's been kind of cold the past couple of weeks with the rumors, but who knows if he doesn't show up in the future, they might have to make a move. But speaking of quarterbacks, Jesse, we were talking about this right before we started. Deshaun Watson did not show up to OTAs for Houston. This is a team that signed Tyrod Taylor in the offseason. They drafted Davis Mills from Stanford with their first pick in the draft. And
traded for Ryan Finley. Can't forget that one.
Sorry, AFC North legend. I mean, what does Houston do here? Do they just cut ties with him, or do they just let Watson's legal thing ride out?
They're going to let the legal thing ride out. I think everybody's going to let the legal thing ride out. He's not going to play this year. That's for sure. His deposition doesn't even start until 2022. The NFL is absolutely not going to let him play while all this is pending. I don't know if you guys remember, but when, Adrian Peterson had the whole thing with his son and that whole debacle, they put him on the exempt list. And that is nowhere near the magnitude of what Deshaun Watson is going to be doing. So he's not going to play this year. I think there's a 0% chance of that. The real thing is going to be, when the Texans have the number 1 pick at the end of this year, because they have the worst roster in the NFL, and Tyrod Taylor's not winning you games. He'll stop you from losing games. He's a great game manager, but he's not going out there and winning games for you. What do they do once they're sitting at number 1? Some quarterback has now been deemed, worthy of the number 1 pick, even though I don't love any of the prospects in this draft. What happens then with Watson? And I don't know. I don't even know if there's a future for Deshaun Watson in the NFL as we stand right now.
I'm going to tell you what they're going to do. If I'm the Texans, I'm going to take that quarterback with that first pick, because you basically said it right now that you don't know the future of Deshaun Watson. Even if he does get cleared of all these charges and all that stuff, it's a cheaper option too for someone who could be at that caliber of Deshaun Watson. We don't know what, like you said, which college stud is going to be drafted at number 1, but it most likely will be a quarterback. So if I'm the Texans, you're not waiting until 2022 or whatever, how many years you said that thing's going to take place. And who knows, the trial might even take longer than that at this point. We don't even know how long this whole thing's going to take in general. So if you need a quarterback and you got number 1 overall, you got to go and take that. But besides the point. I think, Jess, you mentioned it too, that his career might be completely done in the NFL, especially if he is found guilty of these charges and all this stuff, especially if he's guilty. But even if he isn't, like, do the people really want to take a risk with all the drama that's involved with having him on your squad now? Like, I really wouldn't want to take that much of a risk, but it's a very fishy situation, to say the least.
And if you're Houston and a team is still offering you a package, you have to really think long and hard. Do I just cut my ties? It's going to be a long year or 2 for Watson. The chances of him playing in the NFL are slimming by the day. Do you just trade him at that point? He clearly doesn't want to be there. And nothing you say is going to.
If a team is offering me something, absolutely at this point. If there's still a team out there offering something for him, I would absolutely take the deal. Assuming it's, not a 6th round pick. I'd assume that it would have to be still some type of haul. If a team is willing to trade for him, they probably have to assume that he's going to be able to play again. But if I'm Houston, yeah, absolutely, I'd trade and move on. It seems like they also, in the offseason, signed all these 1-year deals, a lot of backups, a lot of depth. It seems like they're kind of preparing for next year to be, maybe even a total rip down of even anything they have left. Maybe getting rid of Tunzel, maybe trading off kind of, different things. I think they're gearing up for next year, not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, a team would have to be insane to offer a package for Deshaun Watson right now. I think that even as a football move, it's not smart. And as just a public relations and a marketing move, it would be disastrous. So I don't think that he gets moved at all. I think those conversations have pretty much died out, or at least I would assume. The question is, what do the Texans do? And they're not giving us much of anything. There's really, like, the conversations around Deshaun Watson have kind of, much like the Aaron Rodgers talks, like, we just don't hear anything nowadays. So it's hard to even know what's going on. It's a murky and a messy situation that I just don't feel confident enough about the facts to even comment on.
Yeah. It's a tough situation there with Watson and Houston, but again, we've been waiting the past 4 months for news, and we're just going to kind of let this ride out and take as much news as we can. But before we go, a few more notes around the NFL. Clark, your favorite kicker retired, the best kicker in history.
Yeah, man. Not much to say. Like, the greatest kicker of all time. Shout out to Vinatieri. I know he went out kind of sourly with a sour taste in his mouth, kind of stinking that last season because he was old as it is, but with the Patriots, with the Colts, the greatest kicker of all time. I don't think there's a debate about that. There's debates about other positions. Who's the greatest running back? You can say Barry. You can say a bunch of other guys, but man, if you're looking at just strictly kickers, man, it's he leads the league all-time points scored altogether. So man, there's not much of a debate, and it's awesome to see him finally, get that recognition and ride out into the sunset. So props to Vinatieri. That's all I got on it.
Yeah, and then Joe, question for you here, buddy. Expectations for former MLB player Tim Tebow in his first year with Jacksonville?
I have actually very high expectations for the second week of OTAs and when they really get into it, and he can't play, and what's going to happen. I have high expectations for the coaching staff.
Let's
and
talk about the
the
33-year-old
veteran
used
players.
to be a quarterback. He's now a tight end.
Tim Tebow.
Oh,
I know, it came up on my my Twitter, Tim Tebow. No, I have very high expectations of the coaching staff and the veteran players to put their foot down and say this experiment has to stop.
yeah. I props to him. First of all, I saw pictures the other day
Looks
that
in good shape.
Jaguars posted. He is jacked. He got muscles on muscles right now. But that's great for him. He's in great physical shape. It looks like he's in football shape. That's fantastic news. But I'm on the same boat as Joe that he's not going to make it. Like, I saw him like push off like the coach with the bag and try to do a little cut route, and it just looked like it was in slow motion when he was doing it. And if you get one of these top linebackers in the league, like if a ball gets thrown to him and he makes that cut, he's getting smacked and he's just falling right down after that. And I just don't see him just staying on the team. He'll be like a fourth string tight end at best, and that's not good enough to make the 60-man. So,
but here's the thing. This is a
Knows
Jaguars
Urban Meyer.
depth chart. This is a Jaguars depth chart with Chris Manhertz, James O'Shaughnessy, and Luke Farrell in your tight end room. I like Jesse said, I think the Meyer effect may get him a roster spot at least.
that's ridiculous.
He might actually get some time on.
That's just ridiculous. Then I wasn't originally on the side of the people saying he's taking a roster spot, but literally if he makes the main football roster that plays every Sunday, he's on the sideline every Sunday, that's taking a roster spot from someone who you actually have on your team that could be suited up just in case someone gets injured. I don't care if he's there at OTAs or whatever. I don't care if you're complaining about a roster spot for OTAs, that kid probably sucks and it doesn't matter who's not making the team. But if he's actually suiting up every Sunday and not playing or playing very poorly or is the fourth string tight end, that's taking a roster spot.
I think it's kind of funny that it seems like all the names you just listed, Steve, about the tight ends on their roster, there are better tight ends like available in free agency right now. Just off the top of my head, I know Jesse James is still a free agent. Virgil Green, Josh Hill, and Luke Wilson also. And then there's guys available through trade like Zach Ertz. And it seems like Urban Meyer is intentionally keeping this position watered down so that Tebow has a chance of possibly making the roster. And honestly, I won't be surprised. I will not be surprised if he makes the active roster solely because of the Urban Meyer connection that he has that clearly runs deep enough that in Urban Meyer's first job in the NFL that he waited for so long, he went out and within a couple months of getting the job, signed Tim Tebow and had enough say to get Tebow in the building. I won't be surprised if he actually makes the active roster.
And honestly, this is obviously a big publicity stunt too. It gets all the news and all the eyes on the Jaguars. And I saw a thing online that some of his jerseys are in the top 5 jerseys sold in like the last month or so. At least like 2 or 3 of his jerseys, like you have like the teal one, the black one. You got a couple like the different Jaguar design ones that a couple of them were in the top 5. So it's doing its job. It's selling jerseys. It's maybe even buying tickets, or it's getting people to come to the games to see Tim Tebow, college football legend. But at the end of the day, it's a good publicity stunt, but not a good football.
If I was starting an expansion team, I would absolutely get Tim Tebow because he sells. Yeah. He sells merchandise, he sells everything. And maybe with the Jaguars, they probably don't have that big of a fan base, especially because in Florida you have 3 teams to pick from. You can go to the Jaguars, you can go to the Bucks, you can go to the Dolphins, and then even right above Florida, you have the Atlanta Falcons. So you have plenty of options there. So maybe this is kind of a thing of them trying to increase sales.
I mean, that's why the Jets signed Tebow all those years back for the publicity. So again, I think he makes the active roster. Playing time, I don't know, but this is a team with
Look,
Lawrence
Bill Belichick couldn't turn Tebow Bill Belichick couldn't turn Tebow into a football player. like that says something. Like Urban Meyer is now going to try to do it, but Bill Belichick already tried and failed. So I think once that happened, everybody was kind of like, all right, we're off this whole Tebow thing. And now Urban Meyer's back, so all of a sudden it's kind of a thing again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's all the time we have for this episode of the Sports Department Podcast. Clark, let them know.
Yeah, guys, thank you guys for listening to this episode. Us four appreciate it, and so does Justin. Make sure you guys follow us on our social medias on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Sports Depth Pod. That's Sports DEPT Pod. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify as well. I know there's probably going to be a wrestling episode coming really soon. Basketball, you can't wait for those, I know. We'll be recapping the first round of the NBA playoffs. Once those are done, Steve might throw together a hockey episode too once those first round matchups are done as well. And just stay tuned, man. MLB season's picking up now. We're hitting June, so getting into a nice long stretch of summer games in the MLB, so that should be fun to break down some of the news in that. But otherwise, just stay tuned to all that fun stuff, and we'll see you in the next episode.